Well, I learnt a great deal because I, of course, live in a very mountainous country with very few flat bits, and Lincolnshire is quite different from that. But I love birds very much, and I know I've noticed, and I live in the countryside in Wales, and what I noticed was how important agriculture is to Lincolnshire. It's absolutely crucial, and also, therefore, how important Lincolnshire is to Britain, because the vegetables, the flowers, the crops, the wheat are used, of course, by all of us. So it's a breadbasket, really, for the whole of the British Isles in a way.
I decided to look at the experiences of the Polish migrant community in Lincolnshire, which is a huge part of the county's kind of life. So I actually started counterintuitively by looking at Polish folklore and Polish fairy tales and trying to see what connections there were between that particular strand of European storytelling and tradition and the folktales of Lincolnshire. So it was a slightly long and twisting route to find my subject to write about. But that led me to some very interesting comparisons and similarities and differences.
What I discovered was that the legends and myths concern themselves greatly with fear of an approaching either other people, neighbours, strangers, beasts, dogs, and many of the solutions to a sense of evil in a creature or something is that it is turned to stone. There's a legend about a saint wanting some grain out of a sack, and the farmer, who was obviously a mean man, said, "No, I have no grain, that's just a stone." So the saint turned the sack of grain to stone. And then there's the famous imp in Lincoln Cathedral, who was sent by the devil to cause trouble. And then I see that as Lincoln Cathedral, the holiness of the cathedral, that is, of course, the aspirations and the good side of the human beings who live in the county of Lincolnshire, who build this great cathedral, then, therefore, the imp is turned to stone and is there to this day. Then the birds of Lincolnshire are so important, and I start with the bittern. We have no bitterns where I live, and I think it's exotic and thrilling to think of the boom of the bittern, which I've only heard in recordings, still existing in Lincolnshire, and the huge flocks of birds, which come eventually perhaps to Wales, that rest in the Wash on the way across the when they've crossed the North Sea, the swans, the geese, the thousands and thousands of birds, and then the resident birds and the flocks over the fields, and I found that very beautiful. So I used the birds, the lists of birds, as a kind of refrain, that could be repeated or just said once between the verses of the poem. Finally, the last birds I mention are the peregrines that have, I gather, nested above Lincoln Cathedral, and there's an angel choir, of course, above the devil, above the imp, the grinning little imp, and then there's the angel choir, and above that, the nesting birds, who I believe came in 2007 and have nested again this year. So I've said they nested on an angel's wing, and I feel that the people have saved themselves from their superstitions, from their meanness, from the result of a big lonely county with people far from each other, a little nervous of strangers. Still, I think, in the news today, nervous of strangers. But they find their cure for all of that in raising beautiful buildings.